Steph, Rach, this one is for you, she says.
Okay.
A lot of people chat about debt recycling, but don't cover off on what happens if you need to sell that property to upsize.
Okay, yeah.
I know you aren't a financial advisor, but from a mortgage broker perspective, could you provide guidance on whether you can transfer all of these split loans to your new principal place of residence when you move homes? Or do you need to basically start your debt recycling strategy from scratch if you sell the home?
Yeah,
That'd
okay.
be unfortunate, wouldn't it?
You emailed this one to me when it came through, and I know what answer that I think I have on this,
Okay.
and I've done this too, because you've got to think we all do it. I've got my owner occupied, and I've got several splits against that. One's for my home loan.
Yes.
And then there's a few different splits that are for investments.
So just to confirm for the first time listeners, the splits you're referring to as I've got some equity out and I've used that amount as a deposit for
another property. So you might call that, investment split one on your internet banking, and you might have another property over here. And when at the end of the year when you do your tax return and your accountant says, okay, what's the interest that's tax deductible for that investment property? It's the split that you've got against your own home that you borrowed for the deposit and costs, and then the other split that you borrowed against that property. You add those two together. So a lot of people do have investment splits against their own home. But that question's really interesting, because what happens when you sell that house and you move? You're closing down those loans and then reopening. Is the purpose still investment, or is it now to buy a property? Now, I've done this before where I do have documented what those purposes were, closed the loan off, opened it up again with those splits still there to say that's for investment purpose.
Okay.
But before answering this question, I really wanted to ask an accountant, which I would always recommend you do. So I think anyone who has this scenario should ask their accountant. I asked 2 accountants and got 2 different answers.
Ooh, juicy.
I know. So one accountant said to me, unless you are doing a substitution of security, so you're actually moving all of those loans directly from one property to another, and the loan's technically never closed, then it's not tax deductible again against the next property. This accountant said once that loan's been closed down, the purpose of the new loan is to buy an owner-occupied home, therefore not tax deductible. I didn't like that answer, so I asked another accountant, and the next accountant said, as long as you document what those things are for, the ATO looks at purpose. So that loan one, document what it was, and then when you move to the next property, you say that loan is for this, that loan is for this, and when you're audited, you do that.
Yeah.
So my advice would be to ask your accountant, but when I sold and bought my owner occupied, I kept those splits as tax deductible for properties.
Yeah. Getting into the weeds of that a little bit, would it matter if we're changing banks there? Like say I'm with, I don't know, Westpac, and I'm selling that property, paying down all my debts, and then I'm buying a new home using Westpac as well. Would that, because I've got some history there and they can see what's happened, would that make the process a little easier?
I don't think that would make any difference, because one loan's closing and one loan's opening. Yeah. So the fundamental difference is what's the purpose?
Yeah.
And the difference in the answer from both of these accountants is one said, once the loan's closed, the purpose has changed. Yeah. And the other said, well, the purpose is still the same as long as it's documented. So whether it was Westpac to Commonwealth Bank, that wouldn't make any difference.
But if you went to Commonwealth Bank, would you create that third split like you had initially?
Yeah, so it's really important that you still have the same amount.
Yes.
You can't just make it bigger.
Make a figure up.
You've got to same amount and say document, I closed this loan at this property and went to this property.
Yes.
But I do think that you need to ask your accountant and also have their answer documented to show that you did the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, documentation is key, isn't it? Especially for the ATO.
What would you think the answer would be to that? How would you answer that?
When I get a no answer, I just try and find a yes somewhere. I'm with you, but it's because we're chatting off air about this a little bit. Like, taxation's so grey, isn't it? Like, there's no black and white, or very rarely black and white. So when it's grey, it's very much open to interpretation.
It is.
And if you can see that you're not actually trying to be deceitful or trying to hide something or whatever, then generally it's okay.
Well, that's the thing. The truth of the matter is, in Steph's scenario, that split was 4 shares.
Yeah.
She debt recycled. She'd created a split for the right purpose. It was for investment. She's still got those shares.
Yeah.
She's still got those loans for that purpose.
Nothing's changed on that side of things, yeah. Just to roll back a step on just to clarify for people, for listeners out there that when you have taken equity and you sell the property in which the equity has come from, you have to pay out that equity loan, right? Because I think there's a little bit of, oh, really? Do I have to pay that? But I've got that for that next property. No, but it's come from the initial property. So just take that in mind, because people come and say, oh, look, I've got $500K when I sell this property. Well, no, you haven't, because you've taken 150 of it and used to go and buy an investment over here, right? So you've actually only got 350 because you have to pay that 150 back.
You do. So it's always good to see what those loans are secured against, and get your broker to do up a mud map for you. Get a little diagram of what's secured against what, or if you've done your loans with a bank, get them to tell you what's secured against what, and to have a little mud map file somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. No, good call.